Welcome to the Lost in History channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one.
Rose Dunn, known as Rose of the Cimarron, lived during the 1890s and became one of the better-known women connected to the Wild West. As a teenager, she was linked to the Doolin Dalton gang and was said to have supported figures such as George Bitter Creek Newcomb. During the events in Ingalls, Oklahoma, in 1893, she was reportedly involved in helping members of the group get away. Later, she left that life behind and built a different future far from that troubled chapter of her past. Frank E. Webner, a Pony Express rider, is shown around 1861, riding on horseback across dangerous routes between Missouri and California. He was part of the short-lived but legendary mail service that played a vital role in frontier communication before the arrival of the transcontinental telegraph. John Doyle is shown in Arizona between 1887 and 1889 during a target shooting practice. Activities like this were common across the frontier, serving both as training and as a form of recreation for cowboys and pioneers. Broadway Street, Round Pond, Oklahoma Territory, taken in January 1894. The town, still within the territory, was an important stop for traders and cowboys. A Sioux camp around 1882, showing traditional teepees and tribe members gathered. During this time, the Sioux faced constant pressure from expansionists and the United States military. Navajo Native Americans at Fort Apache, Arizona, taken in 1873. Day. The last trip of the Deadwood coach is captured in this historic photo, taken on December 8, 1890. Departing from Deadwood, South Dakota, the stage marked the close of an era in frontier passenger and freight travel. Known for its gold rush history and ties to legendary figures like Wild Bill Hickok, Deadwood stood as one of the most iconic towns of the Wild West. A Navajo dance at Fort Defiance, New Mexico, is shown in a photograph taken in 1873. The image captures members of the Navajo people in traditional attire, taking part in a cultural ceremony that helped preserve ancestral customs and community identity. Horseshoe Curve on the Burlington and Missouri River Railroad near Custer City, South Dakota, is shown in a photograph taken in 1891. This stretch of track played an important role in moving people, supplies, and commerce through the American West. A Crow soldier serving with the 1st Cavalry is shown at Fort Custer, Montana, in a photograph taken in 1892. Fort Custer was an important military post during the late frontier era of the American West. A group of officers at Fort Keogh, Montana, is shown in a photograph taken in 1890. Established in 1877, the fort served as a key military post during the frontier era, acting as an important base for Army operations across the American West. Men in Salina, Kansas, are shown in a photograph from 1867, capturing the lives of pioneers and working men on the frontier. During that period, Salina served as an important stop for travelers, traders, and merchants moving deeper into the American West. A group of Coyotero, Apache people, and their agent is shown at a camp in the Apache region of Arizona in 1873. The Coyotero Apaches, one of the Apache subgroups, were known for resisting outside control and for fighting to preserve their land, identity, and traditions. A young soldier is shown with his horse while on duty at Camp Kem, South Dakota, in 1890. The camp served as an important military post during the late frontier era, when Army installations played a major role in patrol, security, and regional control across the American West. A rustic cabin in Alaska, photographed in 1898, reflects the kind of shelter used during the Klondike Gold Rush, when many families headed north in search of a new life and fresh opportunity. Lumberjacks posed beside a massive felled sequoia trunk in California around 1884. Scenes like this reflect the heavy logging activity of the era, when giant trees were cut for their durable wood and used in construction across the growing American West. Dobbins Mills in the Black Hills, South Dakota, is shown in 1890 with a lumber mill in operation. Set in a region transformed by the 1876 gold rush, the area drew miners, merchants, and the industries that helped sustain frontier communities. Chilkoot Pass in Alaska is shown in a photograph from 1897 during the Klondike Gold Rush. Travelers crossing this route faced treacherous trails, brutal weather, and exhausting climbs on their way to the northern goldfields. A frontier post office in eastern Montana, photographed around the 1880s, reflects how these isolated outposts helped deliver news, letters, and vital connections to the rest of the country during westward expansion. Cowboys are shown roping cattle along the Cheyenne River, South Dakota, in a photograph taken between 1887 and 1892. Scenes like this capture one of the essential ranching practices that helped define life in the Wild West. The Bar T Ranch in Hat Creek, South Dakota, photographed around 1890, reflects the kind of cattle operation that helped shape the history of the Wild West. With its wide open range and ranching activity, it stands as part of the frontier world that defined the American West. Photo of an artesian well in Kern County, California, around 1880. The discovery of abundant underground water was essential for agriculture in the arid region. These wells turned the desert into productive farmland. Miners work a placer mining site along a river in California in 1871, using water to separate gold from gravel to uavalchiru. The method was widely used during the gold rush and became one of the most familiar techniques in frontier mining camps. Cowboys brand calves during a frontier roundup in 1888, using hot irons to mark the herd. It was a common ranching practice across the American West, helping cattle owners identify their stock and protect it from theft. Wagons loaded with goods move through the rugged terrain of the Black Hills, South Dakota, in a photograph taken between 1887 and 1892. Scenes like this show how essential frontier transportation was to supporting gold mining and the growth of communities across the Wild West. Gold miners in Colorado pose with their companions in a mining camp in 1898. The gold rush drew thousands into the region and helped turn Colorado into one of the leading mining centers in the United States. Billy the Kid, one of the best-known names of the Wild West, is often remembered for his escapes and his clashes with the law. Yet beyond those famous stories, his life was also tied to a frontier shaped by land, money, and power. In New Mexico, Billy moved through a world where property disputes and financial interests often fueled larger conflicts. As he traveled through the West, he crossed paths with influential figures whose wealth and land holdings were deeply connected to the struggles of the era. Pat Garrett, remembered for his career as a sheriff and for his connection to Billy the Kid, also tried to build a future through business in the Wild West. After stepping away from law enforcement, he turned to land and property deals in search of greater stability. He acquired land in New Mexico and became involved in agricultural ventures, hoping to secure his finances during a turbulent period in the frontier. Like many men of the West, Garrett saw promise in expanding territory and undeveloped land. He also entered businesses tied to cattle ranching and lumber, two industries that offered strong opportunities in that era. Pat Masterson became known for his reputation as a sheriff, gambler, and journalist. Born in 1853, he first rose to prominence as a lawman and earned lasting fame for his time in Dodge City. But his story stretched far beyond the rough image of the Wild West. Over the years, Masterson reshaped his life and became a successful businessman, putting money into property, gambling ventures, and even the entertainment world. He also made a name for himself as a journalist, writing for several newspapers and using his public influence to help shape opinion in his era. The iconic Black Hills Treasure stagecoach carried gold and valuables between the region's mines and local banks, playing a vital role in the economy of the American West. Chinese workers are shown using mining sluices to recover gold in 1871, reflecting the hard labor and persistence that shaped life in the frontier mining camps of the American West. Dick Latham rides back home in Wyoming in 1888, carrying supplies after a long journey across the frontier. Charlie Meeks, a cowboy in Nebraska, poses for a photograph in 1886. Cowboys like him worked long drives across the wide open plains, helping move cattle through the American West. Cowboys from the SIT Ranch pose for a photograph in the Texas Panhandle in 1902. The SIT was one of the largest ranches in American history, covering roughly 4,630 square miles across the frontier. A group of railroad engineers poses for a photograph in Deadwood, South Dakota in 1888. A small pioneer cabin stands surrounded by towering sequoias in Calaveras, Big Trees State Park, California, in a photograph taken around 1886. The scene captures the contrast between frontier shelter and the immense natural landscape of the American West. A long line of ox-drawn wagons carries supplies from the railroad to the Black Hills in 1890. These bull trains were a familiar sight in the Wild West, hauling goods into remote frontier regions before the rail network reached deeper into the West. Miners searched for gold in Rockerville, Dakota Territory, in 1889, washing sediment through a sieve and using a hand-operated washer as part of the hard labor that defined frontier mining life. A tent hotel set up along the Stagecoach Road near the Grand Canyon, Arizona, served as a resting stop for travelers in the late 19th century. The main street of Prescott, Arizona, is shown in a photograph taken around 1877, during a time when the town was still developing after the arrival of settlers, merchants, and frontier trade. A horse-drawn vehicle moves through the streets of Dodge City, Kansas, in a photograph taken between 1880 and 1910. During that period, animal-powered transportation remained one of the main ways people traveled across the American West. A photographer is shown working on the Aquarius Plateau in Utah, in a photograph taken around 1875. At the time, photography still required bulky equipment, chemical processing, and long exposure times. 3 women and 1 man in military uniforms are shown on horseback at Fort Verde, Arizona, in a photograph taken between 1884 and 1887. During that period, the fort served as an important outpost for patrols, supply operations, and communication across the American West. A group of Navajo people is shown near Old Fort Defiance in New Mexico Territory in 1873, during a period when the region was still undergoing major change after conflict and forced displacement. Colonel Dupersaul's Ranch in New Mexico Territory, recorded around 1885, features a main log structure flanked by 2 side towers used for observation and protection of the property. Engineers from the Deadwood Central Railroad are shown working in a rocky area of South Dakota during the railroad expansion era of the American West in 1888. Using surveying tools to mark the land, they helped prepare the route where the tracks would later be laid. An isolated cabin in Yukon Flats, Alaska, is shown in a photograph from 1901. Built from rough timber, it served as shelter for hunters and explorers moving through a region known for its extreme temperatures and vast wilderness. Clay Allison was a memorable figure of the Wild West, and his story reached beyond his reputation as a strong-willed frontier character. After his early years in the West, he turned his attention to business, looking for ways to build stability and grow his wealth. Clay became involved in land deals and cattle ventures, two key parts of the economy that helped shape the growth of the American West. Martha Maxwell was a trailblazing figure in the Wild West, recognized for her work in taxidermy and for making her mark in a field that was rare for women at the time. Deeply devoted to the natural world, she dedicated herself to studying wildlife and created remarkable exhibits that impressed audiences in her era. Elizabeth Custer is shown beside her husband, General George Armstrong Custer. Known for her intelligence and devotion, she later became a respected writer and public speaker. After George's passing, she spent much of her life preserving his memory through books and lectures about their experiences in the American West.